The conference room fell so silent that even the soft hum of the air conditioner seemed deafening. Every employee around the polished oak table lowered their eyes, pretending to study laptops or coffee cups instead of watching a hardworking single father stand alone before the richest man in the building. The billionaire CEO had expected fear. He had expected excuses. Instead, the exhausted father calmly reached into his drawer, gathered the framed photograph of his little daughter, placed it carefully into a worn leather bag, and began packing his desk without a single complaint. No one realized they were witnessing a decision that would soon shake an empire worth billions of dollars. Before we begin this unforgettable journey, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment telling us if you believe kindness always finds its way back, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Echo Verse Story for more emotional stories that remind us that compassion is never wasted. Every office has someone who quietly carries more weight than anyone notices. At Halcyon Dynamics, that person was Callum Mercer. He arrived before sunrise every morning while the city streets were still wrapped in pale blue light. The cleaning staff knew him by name because he always greeted them with genuine warmth before heading toward the engineering department. He was never the loudest employee, never the one demanding recognition, yet almost every successful project somehow carried his fingerprints. Most people assumed he simply loved working. Very few knew that every extra hour translated into groceries, school supplies, doctor visits, and one more chance to give his 8-year-old daughter, Ivy, the childhood she deserved. 3 years earlier, Callum's world had shattered when his wife passed away after a sudden illness that no amount of hope or borrowed money could overcome. Overnight, he became both mother and father. His mornings began with braiding Ivy's hair while secretly watching tutorial videos because he had never learned how. He packed lunches shaped into little hearts because she smiled every time she opened her lunchbox. He attended every parent meeting, every school performance, every doctor's appointment, often arriving directly afterward at the office still wearing traces of glitter from school art projects or tiny fingerprints of paint on his sleeves. The people closest to him admired his determination, but admiration rarely changed reality. Bills accumulated faster than promotions. Sleep became a luxury measured in minutes instead of hours. Still, Callum never allowed bitterness to settle inside him. He believed that children remembered effort far more than expensive gifts. Every evening after work, they walked through the neighborhood park, inventing stories about strangers walking their dogs or watching clouds become castles. Those simple moments became the foundation of Ivy's happiness. Halcyon Dynamics, however, had changed dramatically after billionaire investor Alaric Thorne purchased controlling ownership. Newspapers celebrated him as a visionary genius capable of transforming struggling companies into global powerhouses. Investors worshipped his ruthless efficiency. Business magazines praised his impossible standards. Employees experienced something entirely different. Departments were reorganized without warning. Veteran workers disappeared overnight after minor mistakes. Family emergencies became inconvenient excuses in the eyes of executives desperate to impress the new owner. Alaric believed weakness spread through organizations like disease. Compassion, in his opinion, reduced productivity. He often repeated that companies existed to generate profits, not to accommodate personal lives. Managers memorized these philosophies because promotions depended upon echoing them. Slowly, smiles disappeared from hallways. Conversations became shorter. Laughter became rare. Callum ignored office politics as much as possible. He simply focused on building software systems that kept clients satisfied. Whenever someone struggled with deadlines, he quietly stayed late to help. He never asked for recognition. Sometimes coworkers never even realized he had solved problems credited to entire teams. His greatest satisfaction came from leaving work knowing another family somewhere could depend upon the systems he had helped create. One rainy Tuesday morning, Ivy developed a high fever before school. Her small hands trembled while trying to hold a glass of water. Callum called every childcare center, every neighbor, every parent he knew. No one was available. Finally, he requested permission to work remotely for one afternoon after taking Ivy to the pediatrician. His immediate supervisor approved instantly because Callum had never abused company policies. Unfortunately, approvals meant little after Alaric announced surprise department inspections that very same day. The billionaire arrived surrounded by executives wearing tailored suits that probably cost more than Callum's monthly salary. Conversations froze wherever the group appeared. Every workstation transformed into a stage where careers could rise or collapse within seconds. When Alaric reached Callum's desk, he found it empty. The supervisor explained the medical emergency, expecting basic understanding. Instead, Alaric's expression hardened. He declared loudly enough for half the floor to hear that businesses failed because employees believed personal problems mattered more than professional responsibility. He announced that if one absence disrupted operations, then that employee was clearly replaceable. Several managers nodded nervously despite privately disagreeing. By afternoon, Callum returned after Ivy's fever had stabilized. He walked back carrying medical prescriptions, exhausted but relieved that the worst seemed over. Before he even reached his chair, he was summoned to the executive conference room. Inside sat department heads, human resources representatives, and Alaric himself at the end of the enormous table overlooking the city's skyline. Callum stood quietly, still holding the folder containing Ivy's medical reports. Alaric never glanced at them. Instead, he questioned Callum's commitment to the company, suggesting that dedicated employees arranged their private lives around business demands rather than expecting businesses to adapt. The room remained painfully silent. Several executives looked uncomfortable because everyone knew Callum consistently delivered more than anyone expected. Callum calmly explained that he had completed every major assignment ahead of schedule and had followed official procedures before leaving. His voice carried neither anger nor desperation. It carried only honesty. The billionaire responded with a dismissive smile. He remarked that perhaps someone unable to prioritize work should simply quit. The sentence landed like thunder. Many expected Callum to apologize. Others expected him to beg. Instead, something inside him quietly settled. Years of sacrificing sleep, skipping meals, missing personal dreams, and carrying impossible burdens suddenly became crystal clear. He realized he had spent years proving his loyalty to people who measured human worth only through quarterly reports. Without raising his voice, Callum thanked everyone for the opportunities he had received. Then he walked out. Back at his desk, dozens of co-workers watched in stunned silence as he carefully packed his belongings. The last item he placed into his bag was Ivy's framed photograph, showing her missing front tooth after proudly losing it weeks earlier. He smiled at the picture before gently zipping the bag closed. No dramatic speech followed. No slammed doors. Only quiet dignity. As he reached the elevator, several co-workers secretly wiped tears from their eyes. One whispered that the company had just lost its finest employee. Outside, bright afternoon sunlight broke through the storm clouds. Callum stood on the sidewalk wondering how he would pay next month's rent, yet for the first time in years, he felt strangely free. He drove directly to Ivy's school just as classes ended. The little girl ran toward him with the joyful energy only children possess after recovering from illness. She hugged him tightly, asking why he had arrived so early. Callum simply smiled and suggested they celebrate the beautiful weather with ice cream before going home. They sat together beneath a large maple tree while children laughed nearby. Ivy spoke excitedly about science class, playground adventures, and a bird's nest she had discovered outside the library. She had no idea her father's career had ended hours earlier. Looking at her smiling face, Callum silently promised himself one thing. No billionaire would ever make his daughter believe her father chose money over family. That evening, after Ivy fell asleep, Callum opened his aging laptop and stared at years of personal software designs he had created during late nights after putting Ivy to bed. Ideas that employers had rejected for being too compassionate suddenly looked different. They focused on helping hospitals manage patient care more efficiently, allowing nurses and doctors to spend more time with families instead of paperwork. It wasn't designed to make billions. It was designed to help people. For the first time, he wondered if that had always been enough. Across town, Alaric celebrated another day of decisive leadership. Executives praised his unwillingness to tolerate weakness. Investors applauded improved efficiency reports. Yet somewhere beneath the applause, unnoticed cracks had already begun spreading through the foundation of his empire. The company's brightest engineers quietly updated their resumes. Clients started asking why familiar project leaders had suddenly disappeared. Team morale slipped lower than quarterly charts could ever measure. None of those warning signs appeared on financial statements. But they were real. And they had all begun the moment one single father calmly packed his desk instead of surrendering his dignity. End of Part 1.